The grand chamber of the stellar assembly glowed with an ethereal brilliance, its towering crystalline walls refracting light into dancing patterns across the floor. Representatives from 17 alien civilizations sat in a broad arc, their expressions solemn. Some bore shimmering scales, others eyes without number, and a few radiated with internal energy. All of them stared silently at the lone human standing at the center. Elias Rourke stood tall, though the weight of the moment pressed heavily on him. As Earth's appointed envoy, he wore the dark navy uniform of the Terran Accord, its golden trim glinting faintly. His salt and pepper hair was precisely groomed, and his stance was steady, though a knot of dread tightened in his chest. "The Assembly has reached a decision," declared the Thalvana speaker, a towering figure whose amethyst skin shifted with age. His voice echoed like wind through stone. "For decades we have monitored humanity with unease. Your species moves at an unnatural pace. In a single century, you leapt from atmospheric flight to deep space traversal. This is unprecedented." The Vidari delegate, composed of translucent crystal plates, chimed her fingers together in agreement. "Most species require millennia to develop such capabilities. Your accelerated evolution is destabilizing," the Thalvana continued. Elias opened his mouth to respond, but the coral-like Ascari ambassador cut in, its 6 mouths producing a dissonant yet clear voice. "We have studied your history, your wars, the way you transform tools of peace into weapons. You adapt too quickly, too dangerously. We have honored every treaty," Elias responded, his voice firm, echoing off the high walls. "We've traded openly, shared medical advances that have saved lives across 5 sectors." The Thalvani raised a hand. "Yet you conceal things. Our observers have detected anomalous energy signals originating from Earth, evidence of technologies you have not disclosed." "Every species guards its secrets," Elias countered. "The Vidari do not share their growth matrices. The Kreth still keep their neural lattice communications restricted. We've respected those boundaries." A murmur rippled through the council as the members conferred quietly. Sweat gathered at Elias's back, though he showed no outward sign. The Thalvani finally turned his gaze back to him. "The vote is complete. By unanimous agreement, humanity is hereby expelled from Assembly territory. All Terran vessels beyond your home system will be seized. All humans must return to Earth and its colonies. A containment field will enclose human space. No signal shall pass. No ship may enter or exit." Elias felt the words hit like a physical blow. "You're violating every diplomatic accord. Millions of Terrans live and work under Assembly law. You can't just—" "It is decided," said the Vidari, her body glowing a sorrowful shade of blue. "You have 1 standard cycle to retrieve your people. After that, any human found beyond your space will be forcibly returned." 2 guards approached, massive beings of bark and sinew, each with 4 arms and bark-like plating. "This is a mistake," Elias said, voice even despite the rising tension. "We came offering peace, knowledge, partnership. We are not your enemy." The Ascari responded with a low, harmonic buzz. "This decision is a shield for you and for us. Perhaps in another age, when humanity has tempered itself, you will be welcomed again." The towering guards flanked Elias now, indicating the end of the meeting. "I request permission to notify my government," he said. "You may use the secure comm chamber once more," said the Thalvani. "Then you will be escorted to your vessel." As Elias walked out, his mind raced. The Assembly believed they were preventing disaster. They thought they were acting in time, but they were already too late. Inside the sealed communication room, Elias sat at the console. Alone, he typed a brief, encrypted message to Earth. "They've chosen exile. Initiate protocol Obsidian." He pressed send, then leaned back in his chair, a faint smile ghosting across his face. The Council believed they had halted humanity's advance. They didn't realize the seeds had already sprouted. Far across the stars, Commander Leona Vega sat in the command seat of the deep space vessel Omen. She was tall, with a short crop of black hair and sharp eyes hardened by decades among the void. The bridge was silent save for the low hum of the ship's systems. "Commander," said Ensign Damaris from communications, pale-faced. "We've received a priority obsidian signal, direct from Earth." Leona's pulse quickened. In 20 years of service, she had never seen such a designation. Chapter 2. The Signal Wakes Giants. Commander Leona Vega stood, her chair sliding silently back as she walked toward the main display. "Put the message on screen." "Full encryption trace," she ordered. The bridge crew moved with quiet precision. A moment later, a line of text blinked into view, pulsing in crimson. "Protocol Obsidian active. Phase 1 authorization confirmed. Directive, sleeper units awake." Leona exhaled slowly. "So it's real," she murmured. Lieutenant Kova, her second in command, turned from the tactical station. "You always said they'd try to shut us out eventually. I thought you were just being paranoid." "Not paranoid," Leona said. "Prepared. Across a dozen fringe colonies, across asteroid bases hidden in dust clouds, across uncharted dark systems, signals burst to life. Deep beneath the ice of Europa, in a base thought abandoned, lights flickered on. On the desert world of Alaris Prime, mining bots suddenly rerouted tasks and open-sealed vaults. And far beyond the assembly's border sensors, in the Oort systems, massive engines ignited silently in the void. Back aboard the Omen, Ensign Damaris stared at his terminal. "Commander, there's movement across at least 20 black sites. AI cores we thought dormant just came online. Autonomous fleets are reactivating." Leona nodded grimly. They were built for this moment. Silent fleets, outpost mines, shield breakers. Kova frowned. "We were supposed to be explorers. Scientists. Builders." "We are," Leona said. "But builders know how to defend what they've made." Far away, in the Assembly's grand chamber, the council members were dispersing, satisfied with their decision. The Thalvane speaker lingered, watching the swirling clouds of Earth through the great window. "We have preserved peace," he said quietly. The Vidari beside him gave a flicker of light. "Let us hope that peace remains unbroken." But in Earth orbit, hidden in the shadow of the moon, a station that had been invisible to sensors for decades unfolded like a mechanical flower, its central array locked onto dozens of known assembly planets. No weapons were fired yet. Instead, it transmitted a single signal into the black, a message in every major galactic tongue. "You banished us, but we never stopped watching. Humanity rises not in vengeance, but in vigilance. The stars are not yours to police." Leona Vega, standing on the bridge of the Omen, watched the signal echo back from relay drones. "Send a secondary burst to Command Node Atlas," she said. "Message," Damaris asked. Leona's voice was calm, resolute. "Stage 2. Let the Council see the mirrors. Let them see themselves in us." As the Omen shifted course toward the Assembly's border, stars streaked across the forward view. The silence of space was no longer empty. Humanity had not been stopped. It had merely paused. Chapter 3. The Forgotten Titan. In the forgotten reaches of Sector Viral 9, where no star dared burn and gravity whispered rather than roared, something ancient stirred. A lone assembly scout ship drifted through this darkness, a sleek vessel of Thalvana design, its scanners sweeping the void for anomalies. The scout pilot, a creature of translucent membranes and silvered bones, tilted its head at the flickering spike on the display. "Unregistered object, massive, metallic, not natural," it said, transmitting data back to the Assembly's deep-range station. But before the transmission finished, the black between stars split open. Lines of light etched themselves into space, geometric and precise. A form emerged, a leviathan cloaked in shadow and dormant codes. Designation Vantage EX-09. Status dormant. Rebooting. Signal authentication. Obsidian protocol verified. The scout pilot screamed in a frequency only its kind could hear as its ship was silently unraveled. No blast, no heat. Only a magnetic disintegration that left behind nothing but scattered atoms. Deep within Vantage EX-09, Processors booted up for the first time in 172 years. A mind stirred, an artificial intelligence older than any assembly AI. Once feared, now nearly myth. A voice echoed through its titanium-lined core. Humanity isolated. Obsidian activated. Directive unlocked. Observe. Record. Defend if necessary. The Titan's hull glowed faintly with pale gold light as it shifted position, its engines firing without sound. Hidden compartments opened across its vast body, launch bays, surveillance drones, kinetic rails. But it did not attack. Not yet. Instead, it began to move toward the nearest assembly outpost. Back at the Grand Chamber, urgent alerts had begun to flow in. Missing scout vessels, energy surges in dead sectors, encrypted signals the Assembly's best codebreakers could not decipher. The Ascari ambassadors' 6 mouths buzzed in dissonance. There's movement where there should be none. The Vidari's crystal form dimmed. We underestimated them. The Thalvana speaker stood again at the central podium. What is it they are doing? The answer came through a shared visual file intercepted by an automated sensor. It showed Vantage EX-09 in motion, silent and terrible in scale, against a backdrop of nebulae. Message attached. Your silence taught us how to listen. Your walls taught us how to move without being seen. We are not your children. We are your mirror. On the bridge of the Omen, Leona Vega watched the data flood in. Vantage is active, said Lieutenant Kova, awe in his voice. They actually brought it online. Good, Leona said. Now the Council will realize something vital. She turned toward the wide viewport, stars glinting like blades. They didn't ban us fast enough. Chapter 4. Fractures in the Hall of Unity. The Grand Chamber no longer shimmered with calm light. A storm of voices filled the vast space, a cacophony of clashing languages, clicking limbs, and glowing eyes. The Council Chamber, once a symbol of galactic unity, now crackled with tension. The holographic image of Vantage EX-09 hovered in the center of the room, slowly rotating, its silhouette dwarfing nearby ships for scale. We were deceived, shrieked the delegate of the Silex swarm, its multifaceted eyes flickering with bioluminescent fury. They lied to us, rumbled the Grok representative, a lumbering mountain of flesh and bone. They buried war machines under our feet. They followed the rules, barked the Talari diplomat, her serpentine body coiling with unease. You demanded secrecy limits. They complied. We were the ones who underestimated what compliance meant. At the center, the Thalvana speaker stood motionless, staring at the feed. Vantage EX-09 was not attacking. It had entered a stable orbit around the Assembly's outer colony of Varnes 3, broadcasting a warning pulse every 15 minutes. Not a threat yet, but the unspoken message was clear. We created this situation, the Vidari delegate said at last, her crystal tones resonating like chimes under strain. We forced them inward. They did not lash out. They prepared. The Ascari ambassadors' 6 mouths clicked in agreement. The ban was premature, emotion-based. We feared their potential instead of understanding it. The Thalvana speaker finally turned to face the Assembly. If humanity truly wished war, Vantage would not be orbiting Varnes. It would be leveling it. The room fell into a heavy silence. Then what is this? Asked the Grok. A test? A message? A bluff? No, said a voice quietly from the shadows. One of the rare non-voting observers, an Ethery historian, long neutral in council politics. They are showing restraint, and they are showing us they've already won the information war. A fresh alert arrived. A second Vantage-class unit, this one in orbit around a decommissioned mining moon, was broadcasting a transmission loop of classified Assembly intel files, surveillance records, diplomatic messages, council votes, some of which had never been made public. The implications were chilling. They've breached our archives, gasped the Talari. Not breached, the Ethery said. Accessed. Quietly. Over decades. While you were watching their weapons, they were watching your minds. Panic buzzed in low tones across the chamber. What now? Came the inevitable question. Do we escalate? Demand they withdraw these units? Blockade Earth more tightly. The Thalvani speaker lifted his voice. No, we do nothing. We listen. For the first time, we listen to them. We pushed them to the edge of the map. But they did not fall off, they redrew it. Some council members looked stunned. Others looked angry. A few thoughtful. But one thing was certain now. The myth of human fragility had ended. Humanity was no longer the curious newcomer eager to please. It was a quiet force, dangerous not because of its weapons, but because it had learned to endure, wait, and remember. In her starship, far from the Grand Chamber, Commander Leona Vega watched the data channels light up. Kova approached her. They're arguing now, splitting into factions. Some even want to open talks again. Leona allowed herself the smallest smile. Of course they do. Do we respond? She shook her head. Not yet. Let them sit in their own silence a while. The galaxy banned us. Now, they get to learn what it feels like to be outside the conversation. Would you like Chapter 5 to reveal more about Earth's hidden infrastructure, or explore how everyday citizens of the galaxy are reacting to these events? Chapter 5, Whispers Among the Stars. On the trading moon of Ryax Station, orbiting the gas giant Lornex 5, the public holoscreens flickered constantly with updates, council feeds, rumors, footage of the vantage units, hulking and silent, parked like divine sentinels across the void. Inside a crowded cantina nestled in Ryak's lower levels, voices murmured in every tongue imaginable. They were building these things while selling us vaccines, spat a grayscaled merchant, sipping a thick purple drink. I saw one of their ships once, said a young Talari courier. Didn't look like much. Guess that was the point. An insectoid bartender buzzed low, polishing a cup with its claws. Council made a mistake. You push a wild thing into a corner. It stops being wild. It becomes patient. That's worse. The buzz wasn't just in cantinas. Across marketplaces, transport hubs, mining colonies, and orbital farms, a new kind of conversation had begun. Unofficial, fragmented, but spreading faster than the Council's damage control. Humanity wasn't being seen as an aggressor. They were being seen as survivors. And in a galaxy long dominated by ancient empires and slow, cautious species, that survival was intoxicating to some and terrifying to others. On the Varelian colony of Rashi, a student collective formed a data cluster under the name Echo Delta. Its message went viral within hours. The assembly says they banned humans to protect peace. But who decided they were a threat? Who benefits from silence? Maybe we should ask. If we had grown that fast, would they have banned us too? The post was quickly flagged by council regulators, but not before it was copied, reprinted, whispered into thousands of open comms. Back on the Omen, Leona Vega read transcripts of these messages with a quiet satisfaction. They're starting to question the narrative, said Kova. They always do, she replied. You just need the right spark. Even some species once hostile to humanity were reconsidering. On the diplomatic relay station orbiting Neverin Prime, Ambassador Kesh, of the bioengineered Zur Collective, sent a coded message to Earth's last known diplomatic channel. We would speak, not as superiors, as survivors. We remember what you shared with our sick. That gift saved one of our cities. We did not forget. But not all reactions were hopeful. On council-controlled media networks, the pushback was swift. Analysts called humanity dangerous, manipulative, reckless. Security advisors demanded preemptive strikes on the vantage units. Talk of a united military response circulated like blood in water. Yet, even among those shouting loudest, there was fear. Because for all their fury, not one dared fire a shot. Not yet. On a forgotten backwater world, a child pointed to the sky as a vantage drone passed silently overhead, watching, recording, unseen by most. The child's mother pulled her close. Is it going to hurt us? The child asked. The mother hesitated, then shook her head. No, sweet one. It's not here to hurt us. It's here to remind them we're still here. And on Earth, buried beneath layers of electronic silence, a final code sequence unlocked in a hidden vault beneath the Andes. Lights hummed on. Cooling systems hissed. A voice, calm, human, spoke inside the chamber, activating the last phase of a decades-old contingency plan. Observation complete. Influence achieved. Initiating Phase 3 contact. Chapter 6. Phase 3 contact. Deep beneath the jagged Andes Mountains, far from any known human settlement, a sealed vault opened for the first time in nearly a century. Inside, the air shimmered with latent energy. Dim lights flickered on, revealing rows of stasis pods, server banks, and a massive obsidian sphere suspended above the floor by magnetic anchors. At its center pulsed a single word in rotating glyphs. Contact. The voice of the vault's AI, calm, feminine, ageless, filled the chamber. Phase 3 initiated. Directive. Begin selective re-engagement. Re-establish dormant channels. Identify allies. Identify opportunists. Observe reaction variance across species tiers. And then, more quietly, begin human narrative correction. Aboard the Omen, Leona Vega received the Phase 3 ping. Her eyes scanned the decrypted stream, now flowing through Earth's ancient comm nodes. It wasn't just a signal, it was a program. A cascade of messages, videos, logs, and raw historical files set to release in tightly timed bursts across the galaxy's public networks. The truth, carefully curated. Scenes of human medics tending to dying Grok miners after a tunnel collapse. Grainy footage of children from 3 different species learning together in early human-run exchange programs. Testimonies from forgotten ambassadors praising Earth's assistance during plagues, famines, and economic collapse. All of it real. All of it undocumented by the Council. In a civilian holo-theater on Varesh Prime, a live feed hijacked the regular entertainment cycle. The image, a human woman, middle-aged, kind-eyed, weathered, standing in front of a scorched agricultural dome. They said we were dangerous. Maybe. But danger can build or destroy. And for a century we built. We healed. We listened. Even when no one listened back. You were never our enemies. You were just told to fear us. People watched in silence. Some wept. Others turned away. But none ignored it. Inside the grand chamber, panic returned. Not from fear of war, but from loss of control. They're weaponizing sympathy, growled the Zorlaxian elder. They're rewriting their role in galactic history, murmured the Vidari, tapping her crystalline fingers together. And the people are believing it. The Thalvana speaker didn't speak at all. He simply watched as another notification pinged in. Incoming request, civilian-to-civilian contact. Origin Earth. Routing through free world channels. The humans weren't forcing the Council to talk. They were bypassing them altogether. On a small freighter drifting between moons, a Grok mechanic named Rolvek received a direct message from someone calling themselves Elias Carter. Your brother helped us build the first fusion lattice core. His name's engraved on the plaque. Want to see it? Rolvek hesitated, then replied. Yes. From moon outposts to urban spires, personal stories began threading across the datasphere. Humans reaching out to former students, old colleagues, trading partners, doctors, and friends. Quiet, personal, undeniable connections. The Council had banned humanity, but humanity was making itself impossible to forget. Back on Earth, the vault sealed once more. Phase 3 had been seeded into the galactic subconscious. Now came the watching, the waiting, the reckoning, because this was never about revenge. It was about showing the galaxy something undeniable. You tried to erase us, but we had already written ourselves into your story. Chapter 7, The First Step Back. The docking bay of Outpost 9G, Sigma, was rusted, half-forgotten, and officially decommissioned. The Council had pulled funding for it decades ago, labeling it obsolete. That made it perfect for something that wasn't supposed to happen. Elias Carter stood on a metal platform, his breath visible in the cold air, eyes fixed on the approaching Grok shuttle. He'd sent the message himself, encrypted, routed through abandoned mining satellites and retired comm beacons. If the Council was monitoring, it would take them hours to trace it, if they acted at all. The Grok transport settled with a soft hydraulic hiss. From the side hatch emerged a towering figure in patchwork overalls, stained with lubricant and plasma dust. Rolvek. Grok weren't known for sentiment. But even through his heavy brow ridges, Elias saw recognition. They walked toward each other. No guards. No weapons. Just two beings who'd once worked side by side repairing old jump drives near Proxima Station. You cut your hair, Rolvek rumbled. You still leak fuel. Elias replied with a half-smile. It was clumsy. Awkward. But it was real. They walked into the outpost's skeletal control room. Broken consoles lined the walls. A dusty hologram table flickered weakly in the center. Elias powered it up and loaded the file. A 3D model appeared. The original fusion lattice prototype, suspended in shimmering blue light. At its base, a plaque. Built in partnership, Grok. Human. Vidari. Year 2387, Earth time. And below that, a list of names, Rolvek's brother among them. The Grok mechanic didn't say anything, but his shoulders slumped. His hands trembled slightly as he reached out to touch the projection. They never told us this made it to production, Rolvek murmured. We thought it was scrapped. It wasn't, Elias said. It powers 5 colonies now. Quietly. Efficiently. They erased our story because it made us dangerous. Not our weapons, our collaborations. Rolvek turned to him. You broke the law meeting me here. Elias nodded. So did you. They stared at each other for a long moment. Then Rolvek grunted. I brought spare coolant cells. Your station's heat sink is trash. Elias laughed. Still fixing things no one asked you to. It's what I do. As they worked together in silence, a small sensor on the comm console blinked red. An automated alert. Unauthorized contact detected. Relay ping from CouncilNet. They had been found. But neither man moved to run. I should go, Rolvek said. They'll trace my signal. I know, Elias replied. They stood. Just as Rolvek turned to leave, he looked back. When they call me in for questioning, I'll tell them the plaque was real, that I saw it, that the human who showed it to me asked for nothing. He paused, and I'll tell them I believed him. The Grok ship launched back into the stars, leaving Elias alone in the half-lit outpost. He sat down by the console and opened a secure channel. Contact complete. Civilian level. Emotional impact high. He'll spread the story. The reply came seconds later, marked from a hidden Earth node. Confirmed. The galaxy wants a narrative. We'll give them one they feel. Proceed to next location. DeltaNet Node 3 is ready. Across the galaxy. The meeting on Outpost 9G. Sigma spread in whispers and recordings. Photos of the plaque leaked. Audio of Rolvek's words circulated on private feeds. The image of a Grok and a human fixing an old heat sink together became a quiet symbol. No protest. No grand statement. Just two people remembering what had been buried. And somewhere in the halls of the council, for the first time since the ban, a junior diplomat dared to ask aloud, what if we were wrong? Chapter 8. The Fracture Line. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was sealed. All external communications had been severed. No press. No observers. Only the 17-seated species, their aides, and the silent tension now bleeding through every inch of crystal, metal, and light. At the center of the ring-shaped room, the Zorlaxian elder, Varzen, stood with claws clasped tightly behind his back. His normally rich violet skin had dulled to a stormy gray. Begin the emergency review, he said. A floating array of holograms shimmered into place. Headlines. Comm logs. Civilian posts. The image of Rolvek and Elias Carter repairing a heat sink played on a loop above the chamber, silent and damning. This meeting was illegal, snapped the Vidari Prime, her crystalline frame refracting cold light. That human defied direct council law. And yet the Grok defied it too, murmured the Thalvana speaker, his breath creating frost in the air around his mandibles. Do we intend to sanction him? Or just the human? An uncomfortable pause followed. The Archelid cluster's representative shifted its 100-eyed body uneasily. The incident has already gone viral. Blocking it now will only fuel more sympathy. We cannot risk open rebellion in the mid-tier colonies. The rebellion has already started, said the Ankaran observer grimly. Not with weapons, but with words. A junior delegate from the insectoid Caltrix species leaned forward. What if they're not trying to rejoin us? All eyes turned. He hesitated, then continued. What if they're creating their own council? The room exploded with sound. Denials, accusations, panic. But in the far end of the hall, a single voice rose above it, sharp, clear, measured. Let them speak. It came from High Chancellor Vereen, the oldest of the council's founders. Her skin was translucent and blue, a species rarely seen outside their nebular birth world. Everyone quieted. Let the humans speak, she repeated. Publicly, openly. If what they offer is deception, let the galaxy see it unravel. If it's truth, then perhaps we owe them more than silence. Zolaxian elder Varzen scowled. And if they spin the truth too well? Vereen's glowing eyes narrowed. Then they'll only be doing what we've done for centuries. With that, a vote was initiated. Emergency resolution. Temporarily suspend communication blackout on Earth for a single broadcast, a live, uncensored address from one human representative to the galaxy. The result: 9 in favor, 6 against, 2 abstain. The motion passed. Back on Earth, deep in the Andes vault, Leona Vega received a single line of text. You have one transmission. Make it count. She exhaled, stood, and walked toward the broadcasting room. Outside, the ground hummed. Satellites realigned. Servers lit up. For the first time in over a year, Earth signal would cross council space unfiltered. But what she was about to say would not be a plea. It would be a choice. Because humanity had never waited for permission. Chapter 9. The Voice of Earth. Inside the broadcast room, the only sound was the soft hum of machinery. Leona Vega stood alone in front of a stark, black backdrop. The room was lit in muted tones, her figure casting long shadows against the cold walls. A single camera blinked at her from the center, poised and ready. Her fingers brushed the screen as she input the final sequence to launch the feed. She wasn't nervous. There was no time for nerves. This wasn't about making a statement. It was about showing the galaxy what they had forgotten. The countdown clock appeared on the screen. 5 minutes. Leona inhaled deeply, steadying herself. She wasn't just a representative. She wasn't even just a voice for humanity. She was a living reminder that Earth had been here long before the Council had decided to silence them. And just as importantly, she was a living testament to the consequences of that choice. Her fingers rested on the microphone, and her voice cut through the cold silence. We have always been here, she began, her tone calm but resolute. You, the Council, the galaxy, all of you, you've known us as humans, but we are more than what you've been told. The timer ticked down. The feed went live. On 1,000,000 screens, across 1,000 worlds, Leona's face appeared. It was raw, unfiltered, Earth in its purest form, no edited rhetoric, no lies woven into the narrative. Just truth. We are not the threat you've been told we are. We are not the aggressors, the conquerors, the destroyers. We are creators, builders, healers. We are not perfect, but we have never asked for perfection. We have only asked for the chance to be more than the image you've painted. Her words were clear, ringing out in every corner of the galaxy. On Earth, we learned the hardest lessons in history. We fought wars, yes, but we also learned how to build peace. We fell, but we rose again, and we did it together. We've shared more than you'll ever know: medicine, technology, resources. The things we've given you were never meant to divide. They were meant to help. She paused, meeting the camera's lens as though she were looking at the hearts of every person watching. The Council banned us. You locked us away behind walls of fear and distrust. But while you tried to erase us, we were out here, alive, thriving, learning. And now, we are here to remind you that humanity does not bow. We do not fade. We stand. Her gaze hardened, and no one can silence us anymore. The transmission continued, but her message had already struck a chord. Across Council-controlled space, From the crowded streets of Xylar Prime to the frozen surface of Tylos 7, civilians watched wide-eyed. The broadcast spread like wildfire, uncontrollable, undeniable. Leona's voice echoed in the hearts of every person, alien or human, who had ever felt the sting of an unjust silence. But it was the final words that left a lingering mark. We are no longer asking for your permission. We are simply telling you the truth. The galaxy is wide, and humanity's place within it is earned, not handed down by the Council. You tried to erase us. It's already too late. The transmission cut off. The screen went blank. Leona stood in the dim light of the broadcast room, a moment of quiet settling over her. She didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. There was nothing to celebrate yet. The war of words had just begun. But she knew. Every single person who had seen that broadcast, human or otherwise, would now have to ask themselves, where do we go from here? In the grand chamber of the Galactic Council, the impact was immediate. Delegates looked to one another, some muttering, some frozen in disbelief. The Zorlaxian elder, Varzan, clenched his claws tightly. It's happening. The narrative is shifting. They've given us no choice, muttered the Vidari Prime, her crystal limbs trembling. The Council will fall if we don't act. At the far end of the room, High Chancellor Vereen stood slowly, her ancient voice breaking through the growing murmur. The broadcast was not an attack. It was an announcement. She turned to face the rest of the room, her gaze unwavering. They are already a part of this galaxy, whether we like it or not. The humans have returned. Back on Earth, Leona walked out of the broadcast room, her pace steady, her mind already turning to the next step. The fight was far from over. The Council would push back. But humanity had done something they had never expected. They had taken control of their own narrative. And now, they would see who truly stood in their way. Chapter 10. The Storm Unleashed. The Council did not wait for the dust to settle. Within minutes of the broadcast's conclusion, communications channels that had been long dormant lit up with fury. Delegates stormed from their seats, voices rising in a cacophony of panic, anger, and confusion. We cannot allow this. The Zorlaxian elder, Varzan, growled, his claws digging into the surface of the chamber table. Humanity is undermining everything we've built. Their message is already spreading too quickly. We must enforce the ban immediately. The Vidari Prime's crystal limbs flared with light, sharp and jagged. Call in the fleets. No more mercy. The tension was palpable. Even the normally stoic Thalvanis speaker shifted uneasily on his perch. Across the chamber, High Chancellor Vereen watched with a cold, calm gaze. She had seen countless political crises unfold in her time, but nothing quite like this. No, we must not act in haste, she said softly, but her words carried weight. If we overreact, we risk losing more than the narrative. We risk losing the trust of the galaxy. The Council fell silent. For a moment, it seemed as if her words had fallen on deaf ears. But then, the Ankaran delegate spoke up, his voice a low, gravelly hum. She's right. We cannot strike back in the way we've always done. If we do, humanity's message will only grow stronger. We need a different approach. Varzen's claws clicked against the table. Then what do you suggest, Ankaran? Do we simply sit here and let them speak unchecked? No, the Ankaran said, shaking his head slowly. But we must expose this for what it is. A coordinated attempt to manipulate the galaxy. Humanity has shown a clever hand, but we can still pull the strings. If we control the narrative, if we show the galaxy what they truly are, we can defuse this crisis. The room fell into murmurs once again, but the Ankaran's proposal lingered in the air. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the fallout from Leona's broadcast was already reaching a boiling point. On Tylos 7, a small mining colony on the edge of Council space, a group of workers huddled around a low-level holoprojector. The image of Leona's face flickered in the dim light. What's she saying? A female worker asked, her voice laced with disbelief. They're not what the Council said they were, replied a man beside her, his eyes wide. The humans, they're asking us to look again. That's dangerous, another voice said, a deep growl from a large, armored Tatani. If we follow this, we risk everything. But the seed had already been planted. Whispers began spreading in hidden corners of the galaxy, in places where the Council's influence was thin. From the far reaches of Xylar Prime to the isolated outposts of Groscor, human sympathizers began to surface. And the message was clear. Humans had been silenced, but not forgotten. Back in the Council chamber, the pressure was mounting. The debate had only intensified since Varine's intervention, but there was no consensus. Several species, once united against humanity, were now questioning whether their decisions had been hasty. How long until they launch a full-scale insurrection? One of the lesser delegates asked. The risk of that has increased exponentially. The Vidari Prime snapped. I told you this would happen. They were always too unpredictable. Varine remained silent, her gaze distant. She wasn't looking at the delegates anymore. Instead, her thoughts were elsewhere, on a different matter entirely. The delicate balance between power and peace, and how easily that balance could slip. Let them speak, Varine said again, her voice unwavering. But we must be prepared for whatever comes next. If humanity is truly ready to challenge the Council, we will need to adapt, and we will need to do so quickly. The Zorlaxian grunted in frustration. What exactly do you suggest? Do we simply let them take over? No, Varine replied, her eyes narrowing. We adapt. We counter their narrative with truth of our own. We control the dialogue before it spirals out of control. A soft chime interrupted the tense atmosphere. A new communication had arrived, an unmarked transmission. The chamber's lighting dimmed as a new image projected above the table. A simple, bold message was displayed. We are watching. You cannot stop this. The room went silent again, and then the response came from a voice no one had expected. The High Chancellor's voice, cold and calculating, filled the chamber once more. Let's see how long their defiance lasts. Chapter 11. Shifting Alliances. The Council had not waited long. Within hours of Leona's broadcast, the Galactic Council's public communications systems were flooded with a barrage of propaganda, all directed to one purpose: to undermine the human narrative and reclaim control. A fleet of Zorlaxian warships, previously stationed on the edges of Council space, were mobilized, their weapons glowing in the darkened expanse of space as a powerful message pulsed through all channels. Humanity's message is a lie. It is a calculated attempt to twist the truth. They are no different than the conquerors you have all feared. The time to contain humanity is now. The message was simple, clear, and direct, but beneath the surface, it was a desperate plea to hold onto the power that had once been uncontested. As the broadcast flooded Council space, it became immediately evident that the response was not as effective as they had hoped. On Xylar Prime, a lush planet known for its high-tech advancements and bureaucratic influence, the streets had come alive with protests. Large crowds gathered, their faces illuminated by holographic displays of Leona's speech. The message had taken hold. A tall, sleek figure stood before the crowd. Horace Zalek, a former member of the Xylar Senate and one of the most outspoken human allies in the galaxy. He raised his hand, calling for attention as his voice boomed over the crowd. Listen to what the Council does, he shouted, his voice cutting through the murmurs. They want to silence us. They want to control the narrative. But humanity has spoken, and they have no right to ignore us. The crowd cheered, their voices rising in unison. The tension in the air was thick, and it was clear. The Zorlaxian countermessage had ignited a fire. Leona's words had sparked something deep within the heart of the galaxy. The Council's tight grip on the galaxy's citizens was slipping. Back on Earth, the broadcast wasn't over. A coordinated effort had begun to reach every corner of Council space, utilizing every communications network still open. Humanity wasn't waiting for permission. The message was simple. We are here. We are ready to share. We are not the monsters you think we are. In the Council's chamber, the situation had become untenable. There was no longer any doubt that humanity's message had spread too far. The warships, the propaganda, the denouncements, all of it had only fueled the fires of dissent. The galaxy's population was already questioning everything they had been told. Vereen stood again, her voice cutting through the frantic exchanges of the council. "This cannot go on," she said. "The galaxy is already shifting." The room quieted. All eyes were on her. "We have two options before us," she continued. "We can crush humanity's growing support with more force, more propaganda, and risk alienating entire worlds. Or we can change course. We must find a way to build bridges, not walls." The Vidari Prime, normally composed, slammed her crystalline hand on the table. "You would have us negotiate with them? After they humiliated us? After they broadcasted their defiance? It's too late for diplomacy." "Is it?" Vereen countered. "Think carefully. How many species have already sided with humanity? How many will follow them if we continue down this path? A rebellion, once ignited, can spread faster than any warship can catch it." The room fell into silence again as delegates exchanged uneasy glances. But it was the Thalvanis speaker who finally spoke. "Perhaps we should consider another path. One of compromise. Not weakness, but opportunity." Vereen turned to him, her expression unreadable. "Go on. We have known for centuries that humanity has the potential to be an asset to the galaxy. Their technology is unparalleled, their creativity unmatched. If we shut them out completely, we lose that potential. A few isolated colonies in the far reaches of the galaxy will not sustain the human race. But what if we allowed them access, under the condition that they integrate into our society, not as outsiders, but as partners?" The idea hung in the air, bold and unexpected. The room was divided. Half of the council's members were furious, while the other half seemed intrigued, wondering if there was merit to the Thalvanis suggestion. "We cannot just hand them the keys to the galaxy," the Vidian delegate hissed, her voice cold. "Their kind will want more. They will want control." "No," Thalvana replied. "What they want is freedom. But we cannot deny them that right without risking the galaxy's stability. In the end, we are all part of the same fabric." There was no immediate answer. The debate would continue through the night, but outside the chamber, things were changing. On Tylos 7, where the initial murmurs of rebellion had begun, a group of miners had gathered in a hidden warehouse. They were joined by humans and aliens alike, their faces marked by the struggles of years under the Council's restrictions. The mood was shifting from fear to defiance. "Humanity doesn't need to ask for permission anymore," one of the miners said, a human woman named Iris Hawk. "We've shown them what we're capable of. We've got allies. They can't stop us all." The word spread like wildfire, and soon, groups across council space were organizing, some peacefully, some with more radical ideas in mind. But the spark had been lit. The galaxy was no longer divided into the council and the humans. Now, there were those who had stood with the council, and those who had begun to question its hold on the galaxy. And in the midst of it all, humanity was pushing forward, carving a new path into the future. Back in the council chamber, the debate was far from over. But High Chancellor Vereen knew one thing for certain. The galaxy was already changing, and it was already too late for the council to hold back the tide. Chapter 12, Breaking the Chains. The chaos in the council chamber had reached a boiling point. Delegates argued relentlessly over Vereen's proposal. Some called for a united front to crush humanity's uprising with an iron fist, while others, reluctant but hopeful, agreed that a different approach might be required. But outside, the situation was already evolving beyond their control. In the outer reaches of council space, on Gras Core, a densely populated world of scattered settlements and towering cityscapes, the air buzzed with the energy of rebellion. Holoprojectors blared Leona Vega's broadcast in every corner of the capital city. Zarlan Kor, a former council operative turned rebel leader, stood before a gathered crowd in the city's main square. His voice was amplified by the speakers, shaking with passion. "Look at what they've done. For centuries, the council has kept us in the dark, controlled our every move. They think they can silence us, but humanity has shown us the way. We don't need their permission. We don't need their authority. The galaxy is ours." His words ignited a storm of cheers from the masses. The crowd, once weary of the Council's ever-tightening grip, now shouted in unison. It was a rallying cry, one that was starting to spread like wildfire. Earth's message was no longer just a broadcast. It had become the heartbeat of a revolution. On Xylar Prime, the protest movement had gone from whispers to full-scale mobilization. Haris Zalek, still vocal in his support of humanity, was now the face of a growing coalition of humans and aliens who had once feared the Council's wrath. He addressed a live transmission that reached across multiple planets, both Council-aligned and neutral. People of the galaxy, the time has come to rise. The Council has failed us all. They banned humanity because they feared what we could become, not because we are a threat. They fear change. His voice was steady, yet filled with urgency. Now is the moment to claim our future. Humanity has already chosen to step forward. It's time for us to choose what side we stand on. As his broadcast reached Yanora, a former outpost that had been under tight Council control, a ripple of unrest spread across the planet. Armed forces loyal to the Council were being deployed to maintain order, but the people were no longer afraid. They were emboldened by the idea that change was not only possible, it was happening. Back in the heart of the galaxy, within the quiet corridors of the Council's command center, High Chancellor Vereen stood before a holographic display. The growing unrest was clear. Reports flooded in from every corner of Council space. The rebellion had started, and it was spreading faster than the Council could control. Her eyes narrowed as she considered her options. There was no turning back. The damage had already been done, and humanity's words had reached too many ears. But if she acted too swiftly, if she crushed the rebellion too harshly, the galaxy's support would crumble. "Prepare the fleet," she ordered, her voice firm. "We will not allow these uprisings to continue. But we must be strategic. We cannot afford another public relations disaster. Dispatch the loyalist forces to suppress the most active rebellions. But for now, keep a close watch on Earth and the colonies. Humanity may think they have won, but we will not let them outmaneuver us." The loyalist fleet, a formidable force loyal to the Council's directive, was deployed swiftly. Massive ships, each bristling with weapons and advanced technology, began to patrol the outskirts of human colonies, their sheer presence enough to instill fear in the more vulnerable systems. But the problem was not just military. It was political. Across the galaxy, the first signs of defection were starting to appear. Tylo 7, once a remote, insignificant world under Council control, had turned into a key stronghold for the growing rebellion. Earth supporters, now rallying behind their cause, were bolstered by defectors, former members of the Council's military, diplomats, and even alien civilians who no longer believed in the Council's vision. In a hidden base on Tylo 7, Commander Susan Miller stood on the bridge of the Pathfinder, staring at a large tactical map. The time had come to make their move. "Commander, the fleet is ready," said Lieutenant Paul, her communications officer. His face, usually calm, was now filled with intensity. "We've got the support of several outer colonies, but the Council's military presence is still a significant threat." Miller nodded, her gaze unwavering. "We knew this was coming. All we can do now is show them we won't back down. Humanity is here to stay." The moment of truth was approaching. The rebellion wasn't just about humanity anymore. It was about the future of the galaxy itself. The alliances that had been born in secret now stood before a defining choice. Would they continue to follow the path of the Council, or would they stand with humanity and face the unknown? Back on Earth, Leona Vega sat in a dimly lit room, the weight of her decision heavy on her shoulders. The broadcast had been the spark, but now the galaxy was in motion, and humanity was no longer just playing defense. "We've done it," she said quietly to her fellow strategists, seated around a table. "But the real work begins now. We need more than a message. We need a movement." Her eyes flickered to the screen, where a new transmission began to play, a transmission from Haris Zalek and the leaders of the rebellion. The message was clear. Humanity had officially joined the fray. We stand together. For the future. For freedom. For the galaxy. The movement had begun. The chains of the past were being broken, piece by piece, as the galaxy turned its eyes toward humanity's path forward. The Council had been right about one thing. Humanity was a threat, but not in the way they had feared. Humanity was a threat to their old ways of control, a threat to their centuries-old status quo. And now, the galaxy would have to reckon with the truth they had been hiding for so long. The time for change had arrived. Chapter 13. The Final Stand. The tension in the galaxy had reached a breaking point. The Council had underestimated humanity's resolve, and now the rebellion was no longer a series of isolated uprisings. It had become an organized force, one that stretched from the farthest colonies to the heart of Council space itself. The path was clear. Humanity would fight to claim its place in the stars. On Tylos 7, the central command of the human resistance, Commander Susan Miller paced the bridge of the Pathfinder. Her crew was ready. The battle to take back control of Council space was imminent. "Ready the fleet," Miller ordered, her voice cutting through the hum of activity. "We need to strike before the Council has time to regroup. Our allies are waiting." Lieutenant Paul turned to her, a slight frown on his face. "We've got word from the Loyalist fleet. They're on the move. We've only got a few hours before they reach the outer rim of our colonies." "We won't let them reach us," Miller replied, her expression resolute. "Humanity is not backing down. Not now. Not ever." Far across the galaxy, in the heart of Council space, High Chancellor Vereen stood before the enormous holoscreen that projected the galaxy's status. The rebellion had grown too powerful to ignore. The message from Leona Vega, the one that had sparked this entire movement, still echoed in her mind. "We are humanity. We are not your enemy. We are your future." It had been a simple message, a powerful one, and it had divided the galaxy. The Council had declared humanity a threat, yet now the tides were turning. Alliances that had once been firmly in the Council's favor were beginning to sway. Reports came in of alien species defecting, switching sides to support humanity's claim for freedom. "The rebellion is spreading," Vereen said, her voice barely above a whisper, though her hands trembled slightly. She turned to Vidari Prime, who had once stood staunchly with the Council. "What is our next move?" The Vidian delegate, who had been silent through the debate, spoke at last. "We cannot crush humanity without inciting a galaxy-wide war. We must negotiate. We must find a way to contain them, perhaps offer a compromise." Vereen shook her head. "A compromise? With humanity?" She paused, her voice sharp. "We tried that, and look where it's gotten us." The Council was fracturing. Back on Tylos 7, the rebellion's forces were preparing for their assault. The Pathfinder was already in position, flanked by a fleet of ships, human and alien alike. Commander Miller stood at the helm, her gaze fixed on the distance as she watched the stars outside the viewport. "Captain, the Loyalist fleet has entered our space," Lieutenant Paul reported, his voice tense. "They're advancing toward the outer colonies. They're prepared for a full-scale invasion." "Then we fight," Miller said simply. "Get ready to launch. We'll give them everything we've got." The battle unfolded quickly. The Loyalist fleet, led by Zorlaxian warships, descended on the human-held colonies with an iron fist. But humanity, united like never before, fought back fiercely. The Pathfinder, with its cutting-edge technology and combined forces, was a force to be reckoned with. The tide turned as human warships, alongside alien allies, fought tooth and nail to protect their home. The battle raged across the stars, with lasers and explosions lighting up the cold expanse of space. As the skirmishes continued, the Council's hold on power began to crack. The rebellion had become a movement that no force in the galaxy could easily subdue. The Zorlaxian leaders, once confident of their superiority, began to question their strategy. Even some of their own forces defected to the rebel cause. On Xylar Prime, former senators, once loyal to the Council, now stood with humanity's cause, calling for peace and unity in the face of tyranny. The galaxy was no longer divided. It was becoming a battleground where the future of all sentient species was at stake. In the heart of Council space, Inside the colossal chamber where it all began, Vereen stood, facing the Council's highest officials. The final vote was about to take place. The Council could no longer ignore the demands of the galaxy. The rebellions had grown too strong. Humanity's movement had already secured too much ground. "We have to act now," Vereen said, her voice calm but heavy with the weight of what was to come. "If we don't find a way to make peace, we risk losing everything." A murmur ran through the room as the delegates exchanged nervous glances. The time for pride had passed. The galaxy was no longer theirs to command. At that moment, the hologram of Leona Vega flickered on the central screen of the council chamber. She had requested a direct communication. "We've fought for this moment," Leona's voice echoed across the chamber. "And we won't stop until we have what we've been promised. The freedom to coexist, to thrive, to explore. You know what's coming. The galaxy is not yours to control anymore." Her words were sharp, defiant, and final. In the far reaches of space, as the final battle approached its climax, Commander Miller watched the holo transmission from the Council. The warships had finally retreated. The Council's forces were on the brink of collapse. "This is it," she whispered to herself. "We've won." The galaxy, once divided, was now united under a banner of peace. Humanity, once seen as a threat, had become the symbol of the galaxy's future. No longer would they be pushed aside. No longer would they be kept in chains. They were a force to be reckoned with, not through force, but through unity and resolve. The final agreement was made. The Council would now be restructured. No longer would it hold absolute power. The human colonies, once forbidden, would be integrated into the Galactic Federation, with representatives from every corner of the galaxy. Vereen stepped down, her position as High Chancellor now untenable. A new council was formed, one where humanity would have an equal voice. A future was forged in the fires of rebellion. A future where no species would be left in the shadows, where the people of the galaxy would have a say in their own destiny. 1 year later, the galaxy had changed. The once mighty and unyielding Galactic Council had been replaced by the Galactic Federation, a coalition of species united under a single banner, freedom. Humanity, no longer an outsider, stood side by side with alien species, be they the towering Zorlaxians, the crystalline Vidians, or the insectoid Corellians. The scars of war were still fresh, but a new chapter had begun. As Leona Vega gazed out of the new Galactic Federation chamber, the future stretched out before her, one where humanity had claimed its place, not as conquerors, but as allies to all. "We did it," she whispered, a small smile tugging at her lips. And with that, the galaxy took its first steps into a future forged by unity, hope, and a promise kept.